Doctor Who.
Yep.
Episode 3. What was it called? I want to keep calling it Midnight.
Yeah, I don't know.
Midnight 2. But what's the episode called?
That's such a good point. It's like, I know it's a one word. I'm pretty sure.
The Well.
The Well.
The Well.
Yeah, The Well.
Well. It turns out, full spoilers for Doctor Who. This episode sees the Doctor and Belinda. They end up on a planet in the future. We're continuing that arc of like, can she get home? They're trying. But again, we get another like bottle story where they, it's a classic sort of base under siege Doctor Who horror story.
Yeah.
Where they come across this sole survivor, who they all seem kind of creeped out by because they feel like they can see something behind her that we don't know what. But yeah, I don't know how to structure talking about this episode because it's impossible to talk about it without talking about the context that it finds itself in.
Well, that's what's really interesting for me because I don't remember this episode that we're in. I mean, I have seen it. Yeah, I've seen it, but not since I was a kid.
Do you feel like you remember what it's about?
You'd have to remind me. Like, that's what I'm saying. I haven't watched it since it aired, so I think it's interesting because obviously I've watched this episode not really knowing what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And just watching it as what it is.
Well, maybe let's start there. Like,
Yeah.
Having not really remembered Midnight.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this episode and how it kind of played out?
I mean, I enjoyed it. I don't think it was as intense and as good as the third episode last season, Boom. But I've definitely enjoyed it more than some of the other episodes we had last season as well.
I think it's safe to say this season's been stronger so far.
I 100% agree with that. I think so. I think with the exception of Boom, I think being the better episode so far.
Boom better than all these episodes,
yes,
but average.
Yes,
yeah,
I agree. I think the idea is interesting. I thought there was some great bits of tension in it. But overall, I was a bit perplexed with a few things. I mean, nothing was really particularly surprising for me. I didn't necessarily find the way that they dealt with the situation to be very clever. And it obviously kind of at the end, they didn't really deal with it. I just feel like I've seen that trope so many times of like, oh, we'll shoot them, but not really kill them. And like, get rid of you. And even though it should really still be on her because she's still alive.
Yeah.
It's now on her. I mean, sacrifice herself. That's a cool moment. I don't know.
The sacrifice is for nothing.
Yeah.
Which I guess happens in horror.
It happens in horror, kind of cool, but
did feel a bit like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This isn't for nothing.
Yeah.
I think personally, I think it's a fine episode. I think there was a great episode in there.
I agree.
That didn't need to be connected to anything else. I think the idea of this soul survivor having this sort of entity attached to her that they can't see unless they're directly behind her, and then it spells doom.
I thought that was interesting.
Is interesting, and I think they play with it in a fun way, and I like that it kind of leads to infighting this week on the podcast.
Yeah.
Between the soldiers, and kind of like I liked that the slow horses guy was like, oh well, I'm going to assume a command's kind of a bit of a mutiny, and then the commander, I forgot all the characters' names. The commander woman, the main woman, she basically uses the chaos to get the survivor lady to turn around and then kill him.
Yeah,
I thought that was cool because it's like, oh well, if I get him out, then I'm back.
All these people will stop dying.
Yeah, I'm back to leader as well. I thought all that stuff was interesting. Again, love Shooty's take on the Doctor. I think Belinda's a great companion.
She's great. Yeah.
But I just think it wasn't as smart as I think it thinks it is. I think there's constantly a problem. Like, oh, all the mirrors have been smashed at the start, and it turns out like that's kind of like the really easy fix. Is like, well, if you get the creature to look at a mirror, then bye. It will like kill itself, kind of thing. Or like, I think this was really a story that could benefit from being a two-parter. I feel like it wrapped up so quickly, and there was a point in the episode where it was like 25 minutes in, and I was like, I feel like we've barely dug into the horror.
I could agree. I really agree with that. Actually, I actually almost thought it was going to be a two-parter.
Oh, funny enough. Yeah.
The way it was going, and then and I do think the biggest weakness of this episode is that, like you said, they do try to wrap it up a bit too quick. I think that's what. Yeah, I couldn't quite put my finger on this week what wasn't quite working for me. Yeah. It had all the ingredients.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
Well, I think that's interesting coming from you having not got knowledge of Midnight.
Okay.
Because to me, I think it's a fine episode, but like the Midnight stuff actively annoys me. And I've seen a lot of people like on social media, like TikTok or Twitter, over like losing their minds over like the reveal that it's connected to Midnight. Like it's so awesome. And to me personally, as a fan, I'm just like, I think it's really cloying and like kind of comes off like a really, really desperate way to get Doctor Who back in the algorithm of like, because people love that episode Midnight for good reason. It's one of the best episodes of the whole series. And I feel like making a sequel to it this many years later, when you didn't ever have the want to make a sequel story to it under any other showrunner, like it just feels like
tacked on.
It's also one of those stories where what was so good about it was that you never found out the true nature of the creature.
So what is the sort of rough premise of
Midnight? So basically, the Doctor goes on this like tour, and this woman Skye they're on this like diamond planet, where nothing, like they keep telling you, they keep beating over the head with the fact that like nothing can live outside, like the radiation is so intense, and even the Doctor is obviously seen all these impossible things. He's like, nothing can survive outside of there. And then on the like rover, they hear like knocking outside, like a human kind of knocking, and they're all like, "Oh, that can't be real." And then basically what happens is, like it feels like the creature's basically got in the cabin and possessed this woman Skye. And there's loads of things in it that are really genuinely creepy that you never get context to, and that's why it works. Like when basically the monster's like sort of almost like in the sort of process of possessing someone, she's convinced it's coming for her, and she keeps saying it's coming for me, and like you never get any more context to that. Maybe she knew something
eerie, right?
Yeah, like maybe she knew something we didn't, or maybe she was just paranoid, or like you don't know.
Yeah.
But that happens, and then basically she starts copying everyone, and then she starts. It sounds on paper, doesn't sound chilling, but it's a really creepy story. Like she then starts copying people at the same time as them, and then she starts copying people before they say something.
Yeah.
And then basically the whole story is about how the
Doctor's roughly coming back to it, actually.
Yeah, like the whole point is like basically the Doctor relies on his words, right? So what happens when like someone sort of takes them away from him? And also it's kind of like why it's such a good story is because it's about the Doctor's weaknesses in that he's very arrogant and he likes to think he's better than other people and he's the smartest person in the room. And when he's trapped in a room, suddenly everyone doesn't like that. And he's very nonchalant about it and he's very arrogant about it. And then it ends up being what kind of almost kills him because people start turning on him and they're like, well, maybe you're like they basically, when he starts getting copied faster, they kind of think that, oh, the creature's moved to him.
Yeah. When
it hasn't. You can tell as the audience that it hasn't. And then they start saying, like, maybe we should chuck him out of the airlock. Like, and he can't move. So they start, like, dragging him out. And he's like, cool. Yeah, and you're like, oh shit, like they're gonna kill him.
Yeah.
I'm giving, like, a very, like, Spark Notes overview of it. And I'm sure, like, if you're watching and your friend or two, you know the episode inside out anyway. But basically, what kind of annoys me about it is, like, you didn't need more context for that creature. It's one of those perfect Doctor Who episodes that just never need to be followed up upon.
Yeah.
Like, what was so creepy about it was that you never saw what it looked like. You never knew how it could survive outside of that airlock, and you never knew what its true intentions were. That's not what the story is about. The story is about how people can bring out the worst sides of themselves when they're scared and trapped in a box.
Yeah.
You know? And what I said about the Doctor.
Yeah.
This episode, even if it had followed the exact same rules as the Midnight Entity, I still would have thought it would have been a pointless sequel. But what really bothers me about this is that all of the rules of that previous creature are not really translated.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, it doesn't sound like...
This whole thing with this new creature is that you stand behind someone and people can't see you, and if you stand directly behind it, you get killed. And they get physically, like, thrown.
Yeah.
The creature never had any of those capabilities before. That wasn't what it was about. And, you know, I get the whole idea of, like, well, the creature's evolved, or, like, you know, it's been, like, 4,000 years, 400,000 years later, whatever. That's all fine, logistically. But it's more to me, like, what's the point? What's the point of doing that creature in all but name? Like, you do everything about it.
Yeah, that makes no sense. Just, I was just thinking about it. I'm like, you could literally cut out the reference to the Midnight. Like, they're in that planet, and it still operates as an episode.
And that's the problem for me.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't need any of that.
Yeah.
Like, the whole point of it is about, like, this deaf lady who's kind of in this vulnerable position, having people metaphorically and literally turn their back on her.
Yeah.
That's interesting. The whole idea of it being like a clock face is interesting, but it just has to be like smug about it, like you die when it hits midnight, when you're positioned at midnight. Get it? Because the original episode was called Midnight, the planet's called Midnight. It's like, yeah, like I guess that kind of is how it relates to the original creature, but none of the way this behaves is like the original creature. So at what point does it really need to be that way? And what I think is also so damning is that Russell T Davies basically admitted on the behind the scenes that originally it wasn't a sequel to Midnight, and then midway through they were like, "What if we made it a sequel to Midnight?" And it just screams to me of like, we need to get the public's attention. Yeah. Let's get their attention by like making it a twist that it's a sequel to Midnight. Yeah. Like, nothing about this character is the same. It's like it's the same as like RDJ Doom to me, where it's like, just because you've said this thing is this character doesn't make it. If on paper it's completely different. Yeah. The way it behaves, the whole nature of the scares. I almost wonder if the way that the Doctor was sort of saying like, oh, it's playing games with us, and this is kind of like a completely different game to the game it was playing in Midnight, is are we going to reveal that the Midnight Entity is another one of these gods? I was almost wondering if that was going to happen in the episode. Just the way it's like, it's omnipotent, it's mysterious, it likes to play all these different like tricks, and all the other gods are kind of like that. Yeah. I wondered if that was where it was going. I still, even though it's not confirmed in the episode, I wonder if that's where it's going to go by the finale. Maybe that'll be like another, like we've got the Trickster, we've got the Toy Maker, maybe we'll get the Midnight Entity.
Yeah, I mean, what's going on with Miss Flood, man? What's going on? I'm confused.
Also, like,
is it setting up the big bad? Is she going to be like a big baddie, or is
I think so, but also, like, isn't it weird that this is the exact same tease as before, where it's like, oh, Susan Twist, wherever they go in time, this old woman's there. Yeah. And they've done it again. Yeah. At the end of this episode. Yeah. Like, because, like, Mrs. Flood clearly had something off about her anyway. Yeah. But she's, if I'm not mistaken, she's always in the present day. So this is the first time they've now gone, she's appearing wherever they travel. It's the exact same thing as Susan Twist. It's so weird. It's so weird.
It's really weird.
We're going to do the exact same thing again. It's like as if they did Bad Wolf. Yeah. And they did like Bad Rabbit the next year. And it's like, weird. Everything about it's the same. We're just going to change that one little thing. It's weird. It's just, I don't understand what the decision, the reasoning is for these choices. No. But it feels really desperate. I think it's really sad that you do see a bit of the Midnight Creature. I know it's like kind of a silhouette, but it's like, I paused throughout frame by frame so many times. I wanted to see like what's the design of the puppet they've got. And, like, even though you can see, like, little bits kind of obscured, it's like, I still feel like I've seen way too much. Yeah. I don't want to see this. It's not...
Just didn't need to be connected to it, really, it sounds like.
There's a great moment in Midnight where the closest you ever get to seeing it is you cut to, like, these guys looking out the windscreen of the rover. This guy keeps being like, did you see that thing over there? And the Doctor and his other guy are like, no. And then it cuts back to it. And like, you can't tell if you can see anything, where it's like a trick of your eyes. And the guy keeps being like, there's a shadow there and it's coming towards us. And then they like bring the visor down and he's like terrified. And you never see it.
Yeah.
That's eerie.
Sounds cool, yeah.
Because you don't know. Whereas this is like, I just feel like it's such a 2025 like internet way of storytelling. Like, the Doctor turns back, I have to see it. And you have to see it too, audience. Yeah. So that we can mine some TikTok shorts off of this. Yeah. Like the TikTok short is there, isn't it? Of like, what was this planet called before? Midnight. It's a sequel to Midnight. Yeah. Kids. Yeah. Like, it's nothing like Midnight. Thematically, there's kind of some similar strands in terms of like seeing the worst of humanity born out of fear and stuff. Fear and all this kind of stuff. But the creature, I feel like this should have been a standalone story. And there should be more focus on like fleshing out the creature, and then the audience would be going, "Oh, yeah, there's a lot of thematic similarities to Midnight. That's really interesting." And that would have been like satisfying as an audience member, rather than like definitively tying it together.
I agree. Like winking at it thematically, but not necessarily directly referencing it.
Doing a spiritual successor in terms of the themes, but not in terms of the creature, would have been the way to go, I think.
I agree, yeah.
And what's also a shame is that RTD said the Midnight episode was a spiritual successor to this episode called Voyage of the Damned, which was, he literally says it's like, that episode was supposed to be about when the pressure's on, the best of humanity comes out, because there's loads of like moments in that story where people sacrifice themselves for someone else, or like they do the right thing. And Midnight was supposed to be like the counter to that, whereas like people can also get really dirty when push comes to shove. So you already had that kind of parallel. And it's just so funny. It's like, old RTD, like, where have you gone? Like, the fact that you could do that. Now it would be like, well, we had Voyage of the Damned, and guess what? The villain from that is coming back in this episode, Midnight. Like, literally coming back.
Yeah, I do worry that maybe this season and this the sort of new RTD stuff does feel a little bit like an older guy trying to still have his finger on the pulse of what kids want now, but not quite.
So damning.
But just
no, I get what you're saying.
No, I don't. Maybe that sounds mean. I don't necessarily mean to be that mean about it.
No,
but yeah, like you saying that, I'm now thinking back to just like, even like the dialogue and things that are happening. It does feel like it's trying really hard to be very, very 2025, as opposed to just like being a good story.
Yes.
Like the ones you just described. I mean, it's funny, like even those two you just described immediately sound more interesting to me than the episodes that I've watched.
It's not nostalgia; they're genuinely better written.
And that's like me saying, as you know, absolutely filthy casual. So,
but you can watch those episodes and like, there's just tiny bits of character that you're like, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's just it's sad to see. Like, I feel like we've come off very negative. I still thought it was fun.
Yeah, no.
I thought there was interesting stuff to chew on, and I do think it's been better so far, but I think I enjoyed Lux more just because it was standing on its own 2 feet.
Yeah, I see. I think I would probably maybe agree with that, actually. Whereas I feel like this one should have been more my cup of tea.
Yeah.
It didn't quite hit for me. I don't know why. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like, the thing is, all of these episodes have really, have little bits of really great moments where you can see that kind of old RTD you're talking about. It just feels like, I don't know what it is. There's something a bit surface level, I feel like, about a lot of it.
2 things that I want to just round off
before
we depart from Revenge of the Sith 20th anniversary
is
2 things that really bothered me. A, they happen to have in the closet of the TARDIS the exact spacesuits that the people in this time period are wearing. That just seems more like they had a certain amount of budget for spacesuits, so they put them in those. Why? Very odd. Very, very odd. Also, again, this is so fun when like you come in as like more of a casual fan. There's this long-running thing with the Doctor where he wears David Tennant's spacesuit from 2006. Every Doctor is like, or most Doctors of the modern era have done an episode where they're in the same orange spacesuit. Cool, kind of like Capaldi, Whittaker, and Smith have all done an episode where they put it on. So it's become this like long-running thing where like he has that spacesuit in the TARDIS. Would have been the perfect time for Ncuti to follow the tradition. And I get, like, maybe we don't have to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
But in this context specifically, it made no sense that he had the spacesuit on.
Yeah, especially connected to Midnight episode.
Yeah, you would have thought, like, the one time it makes full sense to pull back Tennant. No. Other thing that really bothered me, they keep establishing that when you're 180 degrees behind the person who's possessed, you're bye-bye. You're getting killed, right? And then the woman that gets possessed at the end, she's like, I'm going to go sacrifice myself. Immediately turns around, fights everyone, runs off. Like, shouldn't they have all been killed?
Yeah. Like, so true, yeah.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, that's not good. That's true.
Also, the Doctor like starts running after her. Like, how does this work? Like, is he too far away for the monster to... like, he was constantly, like, behind her. So is he not, like, in the firing line?
Yeah, that makes no sense.
It really bothered me that it doesn't get...
You should have backed out the room and then run off.
Yeah, which seems like an easy fix, right?
Yeah, that's so true.
I would have loved, in a stronger version of this episode, someone does do the big sacrifice moment, and she goes to run away, and Doc's like, no, and accidentally kills someone.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, I didn't even think, like,
I've
turned my back to them to run away, like, you know. But, what do I know? Anyway, this has been the Full Fat Podcast. If you want more Andor reviews week to week, you want more Doctor Who reviews week to week, you want next week for us to break down the Thunderbolts, then like, subscribe, comment what you thought of these current episodes, and we'll see you next week. And Charlie, I am so excited to go to the cinema to watch Revenge of the Sith. Let's go. A huge thank you to Dr. Chike and Peter Vaughan for being my Full Fat patrons. Your contribution to keeping the channel running is immeasurable. If you'd like to join the Patreon for exclusive goodies, early releases of main videos, the podcast, video scripts, and a thank you in the credits, then please head on over to patreon.com/fullfatvideos to choose one of the paid tiers.